Welcome to This Day in His Story, created by American Heritage Worldwide. A reminder that every day holds something new to learn. Did you know that one of history's most powerful emperors lost everything after a single day of fighting? Learn how the Battle of Waterloo became the final chapter in Napoleon Bonaparte's rise to power after years of conquering nations and building a vast empire across Europe. Discover how Waterloo was more than the name of a battlefield, but became a symbol of final defeat and personal loss when someone has met their Waterloo.
Picture this. It's the late afternoon of June 1815.
Right.
And you've got the most feared, absolutely brilliant military commander of his generation riding away from a battlefield in Belgium.
Mm-hmm.
And he is weeping. Uncontrollably crying.
It's just a profound, it's a really jarring image, you know?
Yeah.
You are looking at the absolute catastrophic collapse of a titan in real time.
Completely jarring. I mean, this is a guy who literally crowned himself emperor.
Right.
He spent the last decade bending the entire European continent to his will.
Yeah, exactly.
And that muddy field he's riding away from, it's this quiet little countryside town called Waterloo.
Right, which we all know.
Exactly. You've heard the phrase, we all use it.
Yeah.
When someone hears a massive, inescapable dead end or a huge setback, we say they, met their Waterloo.
Waterloo, yeah.
But today's Deep Dive isn't about the idiom. We are diving into a really massive stack of sources that detail the very real, very violent historical reality of that specific day.
Because Waterloo isn't just a place. It's the focal point of one of those rare moments where a single day fundamentally rewrites the trajectory of the entire globe.
And that is our mission for today. We are unpacking what we're calling the final descent of an emperor.
Napoleon Bonaparte.
Right. And since you, the listener, probably already know the broad strokes of Napoleon's rise, we are just skipping the early biography stuff.
Yeah, we know he was a wildly talented, daring leader who seized control of France.
Right. He dominated Europe. So instead, our focus today is entirely on the breakdown of the machine. We want to track exactly how that massive, terrifying empire so violently crumbled.
And as we get into this, it's vital to recognize that our sources aren't just offering a military autopsy.
Mm-hmm.
They frame this whole thing as a study in fatal decision-making and these really unexpected alliances.
Yeah, the alliances are wild.
But even more fascinating, they connect the dismantling of this empire to the fundamental God-given principles of defending freedom against total domination.
I really want to get to that philosophical connection because it completely reframes the conflict. But to understand how Napoleon ends up in tears on that battlefield, we can't just look at June 18th, right?
No, not at all.
Waterloo wasn't just an isolated bad day at the office.
Far from it. I mean, it was the final domino falling in a very long chain of disastrous compounding decisions.
Right.
To see where it really went wrong, we actually have to rewind to the period roughly between, say, 1808 and 1814.
So the cracks in the foundation.
Exactly.
When I look at the maps from this era in our sources, I can't help but compare Napoleon's empire to a modern startup where the CEO just expands way, way too quickly.
Oh, I like that. Let's pull on that thread a bit. How does the startup metaphor apply to a 19th century military empire?
Well, you know the type of company, right?
Yeah.
They get a huge taste of early success.
Right.
And suddenly the CEO is opening international offices in 5 different countries. They're launching 10 new product lines simultaneously, and they just completely ignore their infrastructure.
They outrun their supply lines, essentially.
Exactly. Inevitably, the cash flow dries up, the talent is stretched way too thin, and the logistics just break down under the weight of their own ambition.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at our sources, did Napoleon actively engineer his own downfall by overexpanding long before he ever reached Waterloo?
He absolutely did. I mean, the primary mechanism of his downfall was pure logistical exhaustion.
Wow.
According to the sources, at his peak, Napoleon was simultaneously fighting massive campaigns in 4 completely different geographic locations.
Where? At the same time.
At the same time.
Yeah.
Let's look at the invasion of Russia in 1812.
Which is pretty universally recognized as a catastrophe. But walk me through the mechanics of that failure, because it wasn't just the cold weather that beat him, was it?
No, not at all. It was distance and supply.
Okay.
The Russians understood they couldn't beat him in a straightforward pitched battle, so they traded space for time. Yeah, they employed a scorched earth strategy. As they retreated into the vastness of Russia, they just burned their own crops.
Wow.
They destroyed their own bridges. They poisoned their own wells.
So there's literally nothing left for the French army to use.
Exactly. When Napoleon finally captured Moscow, he didn't capture a prize. He captured a smoldering pile of ashes.
Unbelievable.
His troops had stretched their supply lines across a continent, and now there was no food, no fodder for the horses, and, no shelter.
So the startup is bleeding capital in the Eastern market.
Right.
But he's also fighting in the South at the exact same time, isn't he?
Yes. The Peninsular War down in the Iberian Peninsula is raging from 1808 to 1814.
Okay.
Down in Spain and Portugal, Napoleon is facing a completely different nightmare. It isn't a traditional war. It's a relentless guerrilla conflict.
Which is notoriously hard to fight.
Extremely.
Right.
The Spanish and Portuguese, who are heavily backed by British forces and, importantly, British money, are systematically bleeding the French army dry. They're attacking supply convoys, they're picking off patrols. They force Napoleon to keep hundreds of thousands of troops pinned down just to maintain basic control.
It's just an endless drain on resources.
Which all culminates in the Battle of Nations in 1813.
Right.
Napoleon's enemies finally smell blood in the water. So Austria, Prussia, Russia, and Sweden form this massive coalition.
That is a lot of firepower against him.
And because Napoleon's veteran troops are either, dead in the Russian snow or tied down in Spain, he's forced to field an exhausted, totally inexperienced army, and he is entirely defeated.
Okay, so the mechanism here is super clear. It's not a sudden loss of his tactical genius.
No.
It's a structural collapse. He physically runs out of men and materials.
Exactly.
And this massive failure forces him to the negotiating table, which brings us to a very specific date in our sources.
Yeah.
April 11th, 1814.
Right, so we are in Fontainebleau, France. The Treaty of Fontainebleau is signed.
Mm-hmm.
Napoleon is cornered by the coalition leaders, and he's forced to surrender his throne.
And his punishment is exile. He is sent to the Mediterranean island of Elba.
Yep.
Now, I just have to say, I marvel at the speed and the sheer drama of this historical timeline.
It's wild.
You would think the story ends right there. The conqueror is defeated, he's stripped of his crown, and he's locked away. It really feels like the end of a movie where the villain is thrown into an inescapable super prison,
Except he decides to write his own sequel less than a year later.
Right. And he breaks out in the opening scene.
Literally.
February 26, 1815. But wait, how do you break out of island exile? Our sources say he sailed back to the French mainland with over 1,000 loyal supporters.
Yeah, 1,000 guys.
How do you sneak 1,000 guys past a global coalition?
Well, you don't sneak. You rely on sheer audacity.
Oh, wow.
The coalition placed him on Elba, but they drastically underestimated his personal magnetism and the loyalty of his guard.
Really?
Yeah, the island security was remarkably porous, mostly because the coalition was just busy bickering over how to redraw the borders of Europe in his absence.
So they weren't even paying attention to him.
Exactly. Napoleon simply waited for the British guard ship to sail away on an errand. He loaded his men onto a small flotilla, and he just sailed away.
Just a brazen walkout.
Yep.
And this daring return brings us to March 20, 1815, when he arrives back in Paris.
Right.
Now, I have to stop you here because I read the source material regarding this next event, and I genuinely had to read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding it.
You're talking about the reception in Paris.
Yes. The exiled emperor returns to the capital, and the throne has been taken over by the new monarch, King Louis VIII.
Right.
Historically, when a deposed dictator marches into the capital of the guy who replaced him, you get an immediate bloody civil war.
Usually. Yes.
But that is not what our sources say happened here.
It's one of the most stunning facts in the entire stack of sources.
It's so crazy.
Upon his return, Napoleon was actually welcomed by the new king, Louis VIII.
It makes absolutely 0 sense to me. Why would a sitting king ally with the conqueror who is coming back to take his job?
Well, it defies every piece of conventional political logic you might expect. But our sources are absolutely clear. They established this unprecedented coalition as hard historical fact.
Wow.
Together, the emperor and the king allied with one another, and jointly, they raised a brand new army.
It is the ultimate bizarre plot twist.
Right.
They literally team up.
Yeah, they do.
So, accepting that this incredible royal coalition is now in place, they have a newly raised army. I imagine they don't just sit around Paris waiting for the rest of Europe to react.
No, they immediately seized the initiative and went on the offensive.
Right.
And at first, it looked like the old Napoleon was back. By June of 1815, Napoleon marches out and engages the Prussians, and he actually defeats them.
But the sources highlight a critical structural error in this victory.
Yes.
He defeated them, but he did not destroy them.
Crucial difference.
Explain that difference for us, because to a layman, a win is a win.
Right, but the difference is everything in military strategy. To destroy an army means you break their cohesion. You capture their artillery, you scatter their leadership, and you ensure they cannot reform as a fighting force.
Oh, I see.
Napoleon won the field, meaning he forced the Prussians to retreat. But he let them retreat in good order.
Oh.
They kept their commanders, they kept their communication lines, and they kept their weapons.
So he basically left a fully functional chess piece on the board.
Precisely. And leaving them intact would prove to be the fatal mistake just 2 days later.
Which brings us to June 18th, 1815. We are finally at Waterloo.
Here we go.
Let's lay out the stakes as the sun comes up. Napoleon is leading an army of 72,000 men.
Right.
Staring back at him across the fields is a British and Allied army of 68,000 men. So Napoleon actually has a slight numerical advantage here.
He does, and if he attacks at dawn, the sheer weight of his numbers and his artillery likely shatters the British lines.
But he doesn't attack at dawn.
No, he doesn't.
He makes the choice that changes the course of human history. He delays his attack until the middle of the day. Why? Why would a commander known for his lightning-fast strikes suddenly sit on his hands for hours?
Because of the mud.
The mud.
Yeah, there had been torrential rain the night before. And Napoleon's battle strategy heavily relied on his artillery.
Yeah.
But in 1815, cannonballs didn't just explode on impact. They were designed to skip across hard ground, kind of tearing through infantry lines like a bowling ball.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So if you fire a cannonball into thick, wet mud, it just plunges into the dirt and stops.
Oh, right.
It's useless. Napoleon decided to wait for the late morning sun to dry the ground.
So he's trading time for favorable ground conditions.
Yes, but time was the one currency he was bankrupt in.
Mm-hmm.
When you are dealing with warfare on this scale, handing your enemy half a day is just suicide. By waiting until midday, Napoleon's delay allowed 30,000 additional opposing troops, British, Dutch, and German soldiers, to finish their march to Waterloo and reinforce the lines.
30,000. So his numerical advantage just evaporates before he even fires a shot.
Worse than evaporates. He is now vastly outnumbered. And remember those Prussian troops from 2 days ago?
Yeah, no, the ones he defeated but didn't destroy.
Exactly. They arrive at Waterloo right in the middle of the afternoon, striking Napoleon's unprotected flank.
That is brutal.
The combined weight of the entrenched British and Allied army, the 30,000 reinforcements, and the returning Prussians is simply overwhelming. The French lines shatter, the retreat devolves into total chaos.
Which brings us back to that striking, humanizing detail we started with.
Right.
After crowning himself, after marching across the ashes of Moscow, after escaping island exile, Napoleon rides away from the battlefield of Waterloo in tears.
It is the complete and permanent shattering of his domination over Europe, and it's all realized in a single muddy afternoon.
So what happens next? I mean, you can't put him back on Elba. He clearly doesn't stay put.
No, the coalition definitely learned their lesson.
I would hope so.
He is exiled once more, but this time to the remote British-ruled island of St. Helena, which is located deep in the South Atlantic Ocean.
Way farther away.
Much farther. He spent his final years there completely isolated and died of cancer on May 5, 1821, at the age of 51.
Wow, 51.
Yeah. He was initially buried there, though in 1840 his body was returned to France and entombed at Les Invalides in Paris.
It's an unbelievable arc. But I want to pivot here because looking through the stack of sources, there's a really fascinating transition at the very end.
Oh, the philosophical shift.
Exactly. We've spent this entire time dissecting troop movements, supply lines, and treaties, the geopolitical realities.
Right.
But the texts suddenly pull us out of the mud of Waterloo and drop us directly into a spiritual and philosophical reality.
And it's a vital connection to make, because if we only look at the logistics, we miss the actual stakes of the conflict. The defense against Napoleon's expanding empire wasn't merely about protecting borders. Ultimately, it was about the fundamental concept of freedom versus domination.
Walk me through how the sources make that leap. How do we go from artillery tactics to a spiritual mandate?
Well, our sources lay out a very clear factual principle.
Hmm.
Defending freedom means actively maintaining our God-given rights and privileges.
Yeah.
This isn't framed as a political preference. It is framed as a divine mandate.
That's fascinating.
The sources cite the Lord's teachings in section 98, verse 5 of the Doctrine and Covenants, which establishes that supporting the principle of freedom and maintaining those rights belongs to all mankind, and it is completely justifiable before him.
That significantly elevates the Battle of Waterloo.
Doesn't it?
It changes it from a clash of ambitious kings into a necessary physical defense of humanity's divine rights.
Exactly. If agency and freedom are divine gifts, then an empire that seeks to subjugate an entire continent is inherently contrary to that design.
Right.
Dismantling Napoleon's machine of domination was the terrible but necessary price required to protect that principle of freedom for the rest of mankind.
Which brings this massive historical epic directly into your lap as you listen to this deep dive. When you step back and look at this vast global struggle, from the freezing, scorched earth of Russia to the muddy fields of Belgium, what do you think it takes to defend your freedom today?
That's the real question.
Because if the maintenance of those rights belongs to all of us, it isn't just a historical concept, it's an active duty.
It requires vigilance, it requires a refusal to be dominated, and as we learned from Napoleon's final failure, it requires making decisive, timely choices when everything is on the line.
Let's bring this all together. We have traced an incredibly complex journey today.
We really have.
We watched Napoleon's descent from a lavish coronation to his structural logistical blunders in Russia and the Iberian Peninsula. We explored the shock of his Elba escape, that completely unprecedented and baffling military alliance with King Louis VIII.
Still can't wrap my head around that one.
It's wild. And finally, the midday hesitation at Waterloo, a tactical delay for dry ground that left an emperor in tears and secured the God-given freedom of a continent.
And that midday hesitation is exactly what I want to leave everyone with today. Yeah.
Think about the sheer scale of what was lost. Napoleon lost a continent-spanning empire because he delayed an attack by just a few hours.
Just a few hours.
Those few hours were all it took for 30,000 reinforcements to march onto the field and change the world forever.
It really forces you to examine your own timeline.
It does. It forces us to ask, what small, seemingly insignificant delays or hesitations in our own daily lives might secretly be shaping our future?
Wow.
When it comes to defending our own God-given freedoms, maintaining our rights, or pursuing our goals, are we making the decisive choices required of us? Or are we hesitating, waiting for the perfect conditions, and quietly setting the stage for our very own Waterloo?
Thank you for joining us for this day in his story. May the lessons of yesterday inspire you to see God's hand today and to play your part in his story now. For more faith-based learning, visit ahsworldwide.org, the homeschool for faith and family.